Welcome back, students. Now we will talk about food preparation and looking at some medically prescribed diets. So we might find ourselves a large part of our day doing the meal prep, the planning, the shopping, the cooking, the cleaning, maybe even assisting someone to eat. There are many types of what we call medically prescribed diets. And this is not for you to memorize, but just to have awareness of some people are on different types of diets for medical reasons. And those are prescribed usually by their doctor, maybe a dietitian at the hospital. So it's important for us to just have awareness of this because as people get older, sometimes their taste buds, the only ones that are really active are their sweet taste buds. And so if you ask them what they want, they'll say something sweet. And sweets are okay, but in moderation. So we want to make sure that we're understanding the right thing to feed those people that we're caring for. So the first diet is called a low sodium diet, and that's anyone that has to restrict their salt intake, 1,500 to 2,400 milligrams of sodium or salt per day. We want to just remember that foods that have a lot of salt are any prepared foods. You know, your frozen quick meals, canned soups, sauces, salad dressings, snack foods, deli meats, bacon, pickles, instant soup, all these things, fast foods have a lot of salt. So it's just, again, as a caregiver, especially if you're in charge of feeding someone, we don't want to just be feeding the McDonald's every day or a prepared frozen meal. We got to watch the sodium and the salt intake. The American Diabetic Association is responsible for what's called the Diabetic Plate. Okay, the diabetic diet chooses healthy carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are a macro. You have your fats, your proteins, your carbohydrates. Okay? And those carbohydrates are broken down by the body into sugar. The problem with sugar in a diabetic is that sugar causes the blood sugar levels to spike. And a lot of blood sugar floating around in a diabetic's diet is a bad thing. So choosing healthy carbs. And what are healthy carbs? Well, those are non-processed, more natural, natural fruits versus cookies or cakes. And whole grains, whole wheat pastas, whole wheat breads, things with fiber, because fiber helps to eliminate the spike. So if I had 100 calories of cookies and 100 calories of strawberries, because strawberries have more fiber, the spike of blood sugar after eating those would be less than the cookies. A bland diet, those are foods that are easy to digest. They're easy to chew. Any mom knows a brat diet. Remember the brat diet, the bananas, rice, applesauce, toast. It's for people who maybe they have an upset stomach, they're just not feeling well, a change in their taste. High fiber diet helps to maintain regular bowel movements, and that's very important in the older population, is staying regular with their bowel movements. High fiber diets also reduce the risk of cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. And this is just more fruits and vegetables, beans and legumes. A low fiber diet, on the other hand, is more cooked foods, fewer raw fruits and vegetables. This is a low fiber diet, even someone who normally has a high fiber diet. A low fiber diet after surgery is really easy on the body. It helps the body and the digestive system start to come back to normal. And then a low to moderate fat and cholesterol diet. It's called the DASH diet, and that diagram is here. This is healthy eating. It's limiting fatty meats, full fat dairy, limiting sugary drinks and sweets, and limiting sodium intake, and then eating more of those fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, low fat dairy, choosing lean meats and proteins. So That's called a DASH diet. So here is a diabetic plate. And I want you to consider that no matter what diagnosis the person has that you're caring for, this should kind of be our blueprint for how we serve a meal. That we should have some fresh fruits, some vegetables on one half, and then on the other half, our grains and our proteins, and then dairy. So for a diabetic, calcium is important for their metabolic process. So it doesn't necessarily have to be cow's milk dairy, but something with calcium. You can have any of the plant-based yogurts, any of the plant-based milks, just something with calcium in it. And then here is a picture of a real plate. Now, again, this is a 7-inch plate rather than a 9-inch platter, and breaking it into fourths: fruits, vegetables, protein, grains. And then we want to make sure that people are getting enough fluids. And that's generally 48 ounces of water or non-caffeinated beverage a day. All right. So remember a few slides ago, we talked about aphasia. Well, dysphagia or dysphagia is caused by a lot of those same diagnoses, and that's difficulty swallowing and moving food or liquid from the mouth down into the stomach. Now, dysphagia can be caused by, again, all these different diagnoses, very similar to aphasia. And what it is when you swallow, if you look at this picture on the left, you'll see that you have your windpipe, which is your larynx. And then behind your larynx, you have your esophagus. That's where the food goes into your stomach. Well, there's a little door, it's called your epiglottis. And when you swallow, that epiglottis closes off your windpipe so the food goes down into your stomach and not into your lungs. And dysphagia is where that little door, the epiglottis, isn't closing correctly. So this is a movement disorder. It is a muscle disorder, a strength disorder, or a coordination disorder. The epiglottis doesn't close. Okay, it can lead to weight loss, choking, dehydration, and death. So I had the privilege of speaking to someone who actually was on the board for the American Parkinson's Association, and her husband had Parkinson's. And I asked her if there was one thing you want my students to know about Parkinson's, anything, what would it be? And she said, if a family member tells you that you need to sit with my loved one while they eat because they have a swallowing problem, then you need to sit there with them while they eat. Her husband died while the caregiver was feeding them. She wasn't paying attention, whether she stepped away to go do something else, but he choked to death. And I had another student a few weeks ago tell me that her mother-in-law also choked to death. Another daughter-in-law was sitting with her and, set her up with her meal and then walked away to go do something. And when she came back, she was dead. She had choked on her food. So understanding that mealtime is really important. It's not a time where we sit them in front of the TV and we go do something else, that we have to be attentive. And so there's a video that we're going to watch that talks specifically about dysphagia, and then creating a diet or creating a meal that's easy for someone to swallow. This is important for anyone who has dementia, who's had a stroke, who has trouble, chewing or swallowing. Maybe they cough when they eat or drink. And so if someone that you're caring for is on a special diet or a mechanically altered diet, this is the video that we're going to watch, and it explains dysphagia as well.
MedDiet presents the Mechanically Altered Diet Made Easy. This session will cover 4 topics: why mechanically altered foods are prescribed, foods to be avoided and why. We'll talk about foods appropriate for mechanically altered diets as defined by the National Dysphagia Diet. And last, we will share tips for easily and successfully preparing mechanically altered foods. Difficulty with swallowing is called dysphagia and can result as a complication from a number of different conditions that affect muscles and nerves of the upper body. Dysphagia can impact people at any age. It really depends on someone's medical situation. Swallowing is a natural response. Many of us don't even think about it. As you take a bite of food and chew it, the food mixes with saliva to form what is called a food bolus. Once the bolus of food is formed, the tongue helps move it to the back of the mouth to be swallowed. The food bolus passes down a tube called the esophagus to the stomach where it is digested. It is very important that the bolus of food go down the esophagus to the stomach and not into the windpipe, which is the trachea. If food particles go down the trachea, it can lead to respiratory infections, or if the food is large enough, the person could choke. It is important to watch for signs of swallowing difficulty and report them to a healthcare professional. Look for coughing or choking before, during, or after swallowing. A wet or gurgly sounding voice, food left in the mouth or pocketed in the cheeks, drooling, or complaints of painful swallowing are all signs of dysphagia. Mechanically altered foods are typically a part of the transition from a pureed diet back to regular foods. The person with dysphagia will still have some difficulty with swallowing, but can now handle the process of chewing small food particles and some mixed textures. With a mechanically altered diet, the ability to chew is required. Nuts, seeds, skins, chewy foods, sticky foods, and tough or dry foods still need to be avoided. Let's begin with a review of allowed pureed foods. Pureed foods will be moist, smooth, and cohesive, with a consistency like pudding or mashed potatoes. You can review the list of acceptable pureed diet foods in the video segment, The Pureed Diet Made Easy, or by reviewing the National Dysphagia Diet Manual, or by referring to our website for a copy of the Level 1 Dysphagia Pureed food lists. A big advance with the mechanically altered diet is the inclusion of small pieces of foods. In general, foods still need to be soft-textured and moist, with no skins, seeds, crusts, or nuts. Allowing small pieces of soft foods brings new variety to the diet. Canned fruits can now be served diced. Depending on any liquid consistency restrictions, juices with a little pulp and fruits like melons may be okay. Soft, well-cooked vegetables without skins, hulls, or stems are allowed, as are well-cooked potatoes without skin. Soft protein foods with some texture are allowed, such as fish, meat pieces in gravy, meat loaves, cottage cheese, tofu, and scrambled or soft eggs. Care should be taken to serve meats that are not tough. Gravies and sauces can be used to moisten meat. Products are also available to mix with ground meats to hold them together and keep them moist. Some mixed textures will be allowed, but the speech pathologist will evaluate each individual, as this can vary by person. Oatmeal and plain cereals with just enough milk to moisten them are approved mixed textures. The key is that there should be just enough milk to soak into the cereal pieces and make them soft. Cereals with nuts, seeds, dried fruits, and coconut should be avoided. Some prepared desserts can also be offered. Items like fruit cobblers, one-crust pies, soft cookies dunked in milk or coffee, and moist cakes are just a few examples of acceptable desserts. Mixed meal items are tolerated as long as they are made with allowable foods. Examples include soups with soft, consistent size food pieces, casseroles with noodles, and meat salads without celery or onion pieces. We hope that this video has given you an overview of the types of foods allowed by the National Dysphagia Diet.
All righty. So that is dysphagia and mechanically altered. I feel that, like, many older adults tend to be in that mechanically altered, that's kind of where their comfortable diet is. our first caregiver that we had in our family was a chef, and she would prepare these elaborate meals with spices and things that just were not appealing to my in-laws. And although they looked amazing and that was her specialty, she did not pay attention to what their needs were. She also would serve them like full pieces of meat, like big pork chops. And again, for a, 30, 40, 50-year-old, that might be fine. But an older person with a vision impairment and the inability to use a fork and a knife and the inability to chew properly because of dentures, oftentimes meals like that ended up in our trash can because they were just too overwhelming for my in-laws to eat. So it's really important for us to understand that changes in the way that we prepare and present foods so that people get the nutrition that they need is important. All right, this video number 2, if you want to go back and look at it in your own time, but it's how to assist the client with eating and drinking someone who has dementia. It is the cueing and the way that we physically assist, but we're also going to watch it here in this next video. I like this video series. It's functional independence. So where it's functional independence is where we meet someone. So maybe they can't open open a jar or open a container of something, but we can put their hand on it and help them a little bit so that they're still doing the activity. We can model behavior. If they don't know how to use that fork, we can pick up a fork and show them, as we see in the video. So it's different ways of cueing and assisting, not just physically doing it for them. That's what's important.
Teachers, let's face it, it's
Eating is a basic human need and is important not only to our health, but our quality of life and socialization. When residents seem to be struggling with eating,
Oh, they already brought lunch.
we may as caregivers step in and do too much for the person and begin to feed them. Starting the process of an activity like eating may be all it takes to get them to engage at their highest functional level. Some steps that you can use include simplifying the presentation of the food.
Here, can you open that? Can you turn it?
I don't know if I can.
Okay.
You can
All right,
use
here,
hand-over-hand techniques to help them engage in the activity of eating.
That's it.
I feel it moving.
Yeah.
If the resident does not appear to know what to do with a utensil, demonstrate its use.
Yeah, do this. Just right up.
Yep, there you go. Take a scoop. Sometimes I find that even handing a resident a fork may help the resident engage in independent eating activity. Sometimes the resident can get distracted with conversation or other things going on in the room. You may need to cue the resident to continue to engage in eating.
Uh-huh. It's hot there. Why don't you have some more sandwich?
Thank you.
Okay.
To encourage independence, you might want to use no-spill cups, straws, finger foods, or even plates with bumpers on the edge so residents can help to feed themselves.
You're a dessert person, aren't you?
Those of you that had kids, maybe you can recall when they were starting to be able to eat independently, things that you utilized, the plates that have the raised edges, sippy cups, silverware that has a built-up handle so it's easier to hold, straws. All of those things are to promote independence, modeling behavior, not just doing it for them, but allowing them to be as independent as possible. In your student handbook, there are a lot of resources for you. for diet and eating. And then come on back and we will review our next module, which is module 9. Thanks.